Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing? Today we're going to be discussing 15 different older eyeshadow palettes that you might already own that I feel are perfect to pull back out for fall or to get re-inspired and just shop your stash. I know that there's probably going to be so many beautiful, tempting fall eyeshadow palettes coming out. I feel like that's like my favorite color story when it comes to makeup is the fall vibes. So I just wanted to take this moment for myself and for y'all. Hopefully maybe it'll inspire y'all to just look back at what you already have and maybe not be tempted to buy all the new things. Maybe a little bit. Knowing me, maybe a little bit, but not all of it. So I just went through my collection, all my eyeshadow palettes, and I pulled out everything that like had like a fall theme or just a fall color story and just made me excited for fall. So if you want to see my 15 picks, let's just go ahead and jump on in. This is going to be in no particular order, but the first palette that I pulled out is the Lunar Beauty Moon Spell palette. I feel like this was partly because of the theme and just like the witchy magicalness gives me fall / Halloween vibes. And then of course the color story is really beautiful as well. It's a little bit more different than your typical fall color story. I feel like between Winifred, Hermione, and Kiki, you can do like that's like a very classic warm brown fall eye. But then between like the purple and the green, you've got like that fun Halloween vibe. So. Next, I'm sure that this isn't going to be a surprise to anyone who actively watches my channel, but I also thought of the Natasha Gold palette. I just love this one for the warm tones. It again has like those like fun kind of pops of interesting mustards and greens, but then there's like just a lot of like bronzes and just, I don't know, this whole section right here gives me just complete fall vibes. And then I'm just imagining all of that with just like a really nice like orange lip, like a deep orange lip or like a deep brown lip. And I just feel like I need to throw on a sweater. Unfortunately, it's definitely still way too hot for sweaters, but it's the thought that counts, right? Next, I have the Sigma Quarter Rosa palette, and this one, every time I use it, I'm like, it's just complete fall vibes. It's just a very, very warm palette. You've got some like burgundies, some oranges, some like deep coppers, and I feel like there's a good mixture of light, medium, deep tones, and I don't know, I just feel like every look I do with this palette has felt very fall. So I've just been waiting to pull this back out and put it into action. Right now I'm really leaning towards doing like a burgundy eye with Dark Night next. I think that would be really pretty. And I personally really love the formula of this palette from Sigma. So the fourth palette that I pulled out is the Menagerie Killer Purr palette. And this is a really nice neutral palette. I don't know why, but just immediately when I was thinking of fall palettes, this one was the one that spoke to me because it kind of has like those like warm tones. It has those mustardy tones that like I traditionally think of with fall. But then you've also got like this really beautiful kind of like purpley gray tone. You've got some like pops of green, some teal, you've got your like bronzy shades. So I just thought that this was another like really fun kind of fall option. Another palette that I felt like I just had to include is the Warrior palette by Juvia's Place. I just feel like this is like the perfect bronzy palette. You've got your beautiful staple mattes between these three shades. I feel like you could basically do everything that you need to for a basic eye, but then you've got all these different shimmer options. And I know like I guess like sometimes it can be hard to show on camera, but they are so rich, so metallic, so pigmented. Like this is such a good affordable fall palette option. I'm sure a lot of y'all own it too. So yeah, especially like this shade right here, this shade right here, all the fall vibes. Next, I have a palette that I own, like the original palette, and then I have like a dupe palette for it as well. So I thought I would just throw them together as one palette, and I can kind of just recommend both of them because they're very similar. So this is the Natasha Nona Sunrise palette, and I feel like for some people this is more summery, but to me it speaks fall. I just between like the warm tones, and then you've got like all the different like burgundy tones, and you've got some different like coppers and whatnot, and to me this is just like a very fall palette. But I also have the Alter Ego Aurora palette, which is basically the exact same thing, exact same color story. The layout is just a little bit different. And I've used both of these extensively, and I could say honestly that, you know, if you want this color story, the Alter Ego one is a good version. Very, very similar. I don't feel like the Sunrise palette necessarily has like super special textures or anything that you can't get out of this one. So yeah, I think either is a good option, but that is a fall palette to me. Okay, next we have another very on theme palette, and this makes me kind of sad. I remember pulling this out for the video last year, and the brand has kind of been a little bit like on the down low. They haven't really been doing anything, and I'm really hoping that they come back because they did so many like super fun themes, and like the color stories are really interesting. But this is the Max Up the Makeup Sweater Weather palette, and I mean, sweater weather, fall leaves, like it's just fall in a palette perfectly. And then here is what it looks like. So you've kind of got some warm tones, some neutrals, some kind of pops of like red and orange, some green, and I just think it's such a cute little fall palette. And again, this is one where I like the color story, and the color story does give me fall vibes, but just like the palette in itself, like just looking at it, like I feel like I need to do like a little fall layout, like picture for Instagram or something with this, because it's still just so cute. Makes me happy to use. I think that palette came out like maybe like 2-3 years ago, so definitely qualifying in the older palette category. Ooh, and then another pretty old palette that I want to include, and I don't know, this is just, I mean, I've mentioned it before as being a favorite warm palette still. This is the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette, and I just still gravitate towards this one, not for the shimmers. The shimmers are a little bit mediocre in my opinion, especially compared to just other things that I have in my collection, but I feel like the mattes in here are still so nice, and like between like these two deeper shades here, you've got like such a beautiful like rich like red brown, and then you've got like a really nice kind of plummy brown, and I just feel like these blend super easily. It's one of my favorite palettes to go back into for like a fall warm look when I've got like single shimmer shadows from another brand and like putting them together. I think is really nice. Okay, I believe this palette came out fall of last year, but this is the Earth Dragon palette from Tammy Tanuka, and I just feel like this is like the perfect bronzy palette. This one's definitely more like on the deep grungy side, but I feel like this is like the perfect little tiny fall palette. The shimmers in here are so beautiful. And you can kind of see the one on top in the middle is a duochrome like gold to green shift, and this is one of the prettiest bronzes to ever exist. You've got like a beautiful deep olive. So I don't know, this is probably like, if I was like ranking this would be one of like my top picks for a fall palette to pull back out. This next palette is pretty funny because it's not technically a fall palette. It is literally named the Summer Days palette. This is from Sydney Grace, but I don't know, I feel like to me this is a very fall palette. So here's what it looks like. It's kind of got a mixture of some like plummy neutrals and like a little tiny bit of warm neutrals. I feel like overall it's a pretty like neutral palette, but then you've also got like some really beautiful bronzy shades. You've got like this really pretty light gold, and I don't know, this is another one, like I just feel like a bronzy golden coppery eye always makes me think of fall, and I feel like you can get that out of this palette really well. This is the light version too. They also have a deep version of this palette. I think it's still available. I'd have to go back and check, but again, a little bit older and just the quality so good. Next we have a classic that unfortunately is not available anymore, but I know a lot of people pick this up, and for good reason, because it's my favorite palette that this brand has ever done. So that is going to be the Colored Raine Safari Raine palette. I mean, I feel like it just speaks for itself. Like the shimmers are everything. It's got like a little bit of like this taupey shade here. We've got some grungy greens. We've got a warm orangey shade there, and I just feel like, yes, it's a small palette, it's a small color story, but it is all the fall vibes, and like just, I can't get over how intense the shimmers are. Like this shade right here called Lioness. perfection in a shadow. So yes, I definitely had to include that one. I also have some like little 5-pan palettes here. So this first one is the Natasha Denona Camel palette. Not too much to say here. I just see mustardy tones and I think of fall. I'm simple like that, so I just felt like this was a good one. Again, it's kind of got like a little bronze here. I reached for this mostly for the matte shades. Another really good matte little 5-pan palette is the Dose of Colors Sassy Siennas. This is just another perfect warm palette. I feel like this just has like the perfect like transition, like every time if you like throw that in your crease, and then that a little bit lower, and then that a little bit lower, that on the outer V, and then like with a pencil brush super deep, and just like the gradient that you get between these 5 shadows, super pretty. And then you could pull in any gold, any like burgundy, you could pull in any copper and just have like such a pretty warm look. And then I have another palette that I pulled out from Colored Raine, and this one, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, you know what, that does really remind me of fall. And this is one that I just don't use that often, even though the quality's always been good. I've just never like been super inspired by it, so I'm hoping maybe pulling it out right now that I will get some more use out of it, because it's definitely quite a bit of an older palette. This is the Colored Raine Queen of Hearts palette. And I mean, just looking inside, like between, like you've got some just pretty like staple warm neutrals, and then you've also got like a little bit of pops of purple, some burgundy, the gold, and I don't know, I was just thinking, you know what, that's actually kind of a pretty fall palette, and I should just try and get some more use out of it. Okay, so last but certainly not least is the Butte Bean Time Shroud It's Freakin' Bats palette. I mean, obviously the theme is all fall vibes, but I feel like this is a fun one to throw in because it's just got all the purple and the green and the Halloween, and it's fall, but in like the most fun way possible. So I definitely wanted to go ahead and include this as well. I mean, it's super pretty. I've only had the chance to play with it a little bit, definitely not enough. So wanted to include that here. And then I also really wanted to include the Lethal Cosmetics Teresa is Dead collaboration, their palette, because of the theme. Like I felt like, again, like the like scary movie theme, like very fall and very Halloween, but I literally can't find it anywhere. And then I was like, you know what, it's not even an older palette, so it doesn't really fit in with this video, but I will just like give it a little honorable mention right now. All right, so those are the 15 eyeshadow palettes that I picked back out for fall. I would love to know if you own any of these and if it inspired you to pull them back out, or if you have something that I didn't mention that you think is just like the perfect fall palette. Feel free to let me know down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.